this fourth session of Lead Small as we discover together what it means to help kids find real faith. What it means to unite you and the home and your few as part of a group. Now, this fourth session, just to be honest, is actually going to focus on you. But before we talk about that, let's talk about where we are going. As we move forward with this process of helping you to become a vital part of what it means to do ministry in real life and specifically to be part of our Kidlife team, we want to remind you that we're asking for a commitment from you. Now, after this session, in the following week, we're going to reach out to you to ask you, what does that commitment look like? And what we would love is if you would commit to consistently engaging with your few over the course of a school year, or whatever time frame that looks like, going into the summer. And of course, we would love for you to continue with them in this process during the summer. Now, as you make that commitment, we're also looking at our families and saying, what does it mean for you to be committed families to attending a consistent service so that that small group leader, you, can get to pour into their kids. Once we do that, and once we have a commitment from both sides, then we get to connect you. We get to connect you to the home and reach out to those parents to help them understand the importance that you play in their child's life. And finally, we want to connect you with that child. That may be simply via text, it may be a card, it may be for the first time in person at church. But as we do that, it also means that we need to connect as part of a small group with your few that you get to pour into. And hopefully, that few increases as your few bring their few because they're excited about the impact that you're having in their world. Now, as I said, you are an important key to that. And so today we're going to focus on you. As we talked about earlier, that big orange dot represents you as the small group leader. And what does it mean to inspire their faith, their being your few, by your example? What does it mean for them to be able to look up to you as someone they can trust, someone who's living this life, not perfect, but someone who's striving to be like Jesus every day? As we would say around real life, if you want to get right with God, you have to get real with God. And so today we want to talk about what does it mean to get real with God and what does it mean to get real in the appropriate ways with your few and your group. Because as we talk about making it personal, it's important for us to talk about the circle that you're a part of. This circle doesn't just represent a children's small group. It represents the small group that we desire for you to also be a part of because you can't do this alone. And finally, what does it mean then to connect that circle to your few, or at least what you do in this circle and the impact that's made on your life in this circle to your few and that small group? It might even mean helping some of those who are part of this circle get connected to other circles and pour into those kids or students that so desperately need another influence in their life. We're excited about what this means to lead small, and we're excited about what does it mean to make it personal. So why don't you take a look at this short video.
One of the best parts about being a small group leader is that you're given the gift of a front row seat to the journey your few are on, in life and in faith. But there's a flip to that, and your few, in turn, have a front row seat to your life too. In fact, this is one of the reasons why small group leaders are so important to begin with. However much of your life that you share with your few will speak to them about your own story of restoration and redemption. But this also means you need to guard your personal and spiritual growth. When you lead kids and teenagers, there's a spotlight pointed at your life, and your few will always be watching. It's the nature of the job. This may be intimidating, but it isn't an intrusion. It's an invitation. An invitation for you to examine your own life and spiritual growth. Now, we aren't going to quiz you on Bible trivia. We aren't going to stand over your shoulder and make our judgments about your spiritual habits. But we can give you 3 strategies intended to help you make it personal. First, live in community. Community isn't just a concept for kids and teenagers to dive into. You need it too. You need to be doing faith with people who are your peers. Your preschool and your sophomore groups aren't your community. They aren't the ones that you vent to. They aren't the ones that you solicit advice from. They aren't the ones that you necessarily even ask for prayer from, although you can when the time is right. They aren't the ones that you process doubts and hurts with. You need other adults in your life. You need a safe place where you can dump all your baggage. You need a place where you can be encouraged and challenged. And if you're going to look at your few and insist that community is important for spiritual growth, then you need to model that for yourself too. The small group you've formed with your few is for them. The community you live in with your peers is for you. Next, set priorities. Remember what I said about how your few will be watching? This is the perfect opportunity for them to peek into the life of an adult who models this and see what it looks like to set spiritual priorities. The truth is that they may not have other adults in their lives who are keeping their priorities straight. And your kids and teenagers may not have the benefit of being around any other adults who have their head on straight, who set time aside for important things, and who follow through on what they say. So leverage this spotlight. Spend time with your own kids. Be a good friend to others. Model a healthy and happy marriage. Make time for your own spiritual development and growth when you're not with your few. Let your small group see you demonstrating the discipline of setting priorities, whether spiritual, relational, or personal. The only way you'll effectively be able to discuss authentic faith with your few is if you are experiencing authentic faith in your own life. Lastly, be real. Now, this one may be a little tough if you're under the impression that the best small group leaders are the coolest or the funniest or the most talented. But you don't have to be cool or funny or insanely talented to lead kids and teenagers. The best volunteers aren't necessarily any of these things, but they're real and authentic. They're confident in who God made them to be, and they model for their few that kids and teenagers can be too. And that makes them the best small group leaders. So be real. Don't give in to the temptation to be something that you're not for the sake of winning over your few. Be authentically you. If you try to be someone in your circle that isn't consistent with who you are outside of it, you'll be found out. And if your few never catch on, then they'll be robbed of the chance of getting to know you and of learning how to appreciate and love a person who's different from them. This is why it's so important to make all of this personal in your life. How can you encourage your few to spend time reading their Bible if yours is currently used as a coaster on your coffee table? How can you emphasize the power of prayer if the only prayer in your life is the one your son recites before dinner? How can you point out the benefits of discussing their faith with others if your motto is never talk about religion, politics, or money? How can you push your few to live out their faith if you never serve, praise, or give? How can you teach your few to be confident in themselves if you only let them see a manufactured version of yourself? Live in community, set priorities, be real. When you make time and create margin for these things, you're helping to ensure that your few are being led by someone who is living this thing out for themselves. It's more important for them to see a real, live person who is still growing, learning, and trying to live out authentic faith than it is for them to have another friend. When you're at your best, you'll be able to give your best. And you should give your best because your few deserve the best.
That is so true. Your few do deserve the best, and they deserve the best version of you. And we know that that only happens because you're making it personal, because you are part of a group that is coming alongside you to help build you up and keep you accountable to what it is that God has called you to do. That is where the real impact happens. Around Real Life, we like to say, if you're going to get right with God, you've got to get real with God. And the only way to do that is in a tight-knit circle of people who are walking life with you. And that circle, as was already said, is not your few that are part of Kidlife. Now, it would be great if you asked them to pray for you in the appropriate way. It would be great if you asked them to support you, but they are not the few that are there to keep you accountable, that are there to disciple you. You're going to learn amazing things from your few, no matter the age, but I can promise you, unless you are part of a group of like-minded individuals who are in the same stage of life as you, that your growth, that your walk with Jesus will never be the same unless you are. And we want to help you to do that. Now, this is a bit intimidating to think about, okay, what does it mean for my few to look at me as the example? So let's talk about a few questions that would be important for you to consider as you think about what does it mean to commit to doing this with a few. The first, what do you feel like you need most through community? Have you ever thought about that? What do you feel like you need most? Because that answer may also be the same answer as some of those that are your few. And if you know that answer, as you think about that, think about this. We have an awesome groups ministry that would love to get you connected to that answer. Second, how can you find balance between being wise with what you share and still being authentic? Now, this is a tough one because you may have that perfect story that goes so well with the lesson that we have shared that day, but it may not be appropriate for your few. And so we want to make sure that we help you with that. If you ever have a question, reach out to one of your leaders. Run it by someone else. Even run it by the few that you're part of in a small group to say, do you think it would be okay if I shared this with my few? And what you share will look different depending upon the age. What you share with toddlers is going to be different than what you may share with an older elementary group. So let us help you walk through that, but I can promise you, they will know when you are being real and when you are being authentic. And so always be authentic with them, but it is okay to be a little bit vague, to not share all the details. Instead of asking for a prayer request with specifics about how your marriage is struggling, if that may be something you're struggling with, just simply ask for prayer requests for something hard going on in your life. There are lots of ways around this and we would love to walk you through, but the truth is there's no cookie cutter answer to that. There's no one size fits all answer to what would be appropriate to share. In fact, sometimes it might be appropriate to share a story with one individual in your group, but not the whole group, with, of course, their parents' knowledge. Because if we're partnering with a home and partnering with a parent, that's going to be huge. And maybe the parent needs to hear that as well. And finally, that last question there that we asked, how do you decide if a personal story will benefit your few? Here's the answer to that. Ask somebody. How do you decide if that personal story will be a benefit or not? The reality is, ask someone. The best resource we have is each other when it comes to making it personal. We are excited about what this looks like as you consider leading small with us and helping kids find real faith. And so you have one more session, one more video to watch with us. And then, like I said, as the process goes on, our next step is to ask you, will you commit to doing this for a consistent period of time? We're excited about what this means. And as we always remind you, never forget that God is crazy about you.